Hi everyone, welcome to AS TV. Today we're back to sprints and relays discussions, and we're lucky enough to have on board Craig Pickering, who's head of Athletes Pathways, so Pathways Manager, and Christian Malcolm, who's the head of performance and coaching with Athletics Australia. In their former lives, probably their more preferred lives, they were athletes in their own rights and achieved some wonderful things on the track. And Adam Basil and I are here today to ask some questions just so we can get a bit of a background into what it takes to be an elite athlete at the levels that both these athletes achieved. So welcome everyone, and let's get some good questions going. I thought we'd just start with you, Christian. Just a background into your career in terms of, tell us a bit about your pathway from getting from being a junior athlete into a senior elite team.
Thank you, Matt. For me, it started off at my very first World Junior Championships, actually, which was in Sydney, Australia, in '96. I managed to make the semi-final at the age of 17. And I learned quite a lot from that experience. I remember just being so nervous, so scared. I ran the 200 meters in the 4x1, but I remember being so nervous and so scared that I couldn't get the blocks. You know, I literally felt like I was just going at 75% because I was just so nervous. And by the time I got around the bend in the straight, it's almost like, right, pick it up now. And I did that in the first round, in the second round, in the semi-final, and I just missed out. And I said to myself then that I would try my best not to let nerves get the better of me. The following year, we had the European Junior Championships where I was fortunate enough to win a silver in the 100, a gold in the 200, and a gold in the 4x1. And the year after that really was, I guess, my breakthrough year where I did the double at the World Juniors, winning the 100 and 200. And later on that season, we had the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur, and I managed to pick up a silver medal and broke the European junior record. So, my junior career was very good, and I feel I was very fortunate that I had a coach in Jock Anderson who was very patient with me, coached me from the age of 13. I always remember, one of the things I remember is that we used to work a lot on technique and speed, and a lot of the other coaches around used to say, oh, he doesn't do enough work. Imagine if he did 300s and 400s, it'd be amazing. And Jock would always say, you have to be patient. I'd only train 2-3 days a week. Even when I was 19, the year I won World Juniors and won a medal, I was still training 3 days a week. We did add in an extra day after the World Juniors. But he was very patient, took his time with me. And that was me catapulting myself from junior to senior, really. I think I finished that season ranked number 2 in Europe, over 200 as a junior, and top 12 in the Commonwealth Games, but actually come away with silver medal. So, he was good. He made me believe that, it was all about getting ready for the day, for the competition, and don't be afraid of anyone else, which really, really helped me, especially when I went to the Commonwealth thinking I'm up against all my heroes. You had people like Frankie Fredericks, Attle Bolden, Obadiah Thompson, as well as, people like Darren Campbell, Julian Golding around. And he used to say, just take it round by round and be competitive and believe in yourself and execute your race. And that's what I did. And I was fortunate enough to come away with a medal as a junior.
Nice. How about you, Craig? Similar situation?
Reasonably similar. I mean, Christian was a little bit better than I was as a junior. So I had the World Under-18 Championships, which didn't exist when Christian was that age. So they brought them in just afterwards. So I went there. It was probably my first major championships. So I was 16 and I got a bronze medal. Saudi Arabia got 1 and 2 in the 100, which is sort of unheard of, and those athletes kind of disappeared afterwards. And then 2 years after that, I won the European Under-20 Championships. And then 2 years after that, I got silver at the European Under-23 Championships and went to the World Championships that year. So it's probably like every 2 years is like a different stepping stone for me to get on. Yeah, it's similar to Christian, really, I guess. Was training sort of 3 or 4 times a week as a junior, and then as you just sort of get older and more professional athlete, you have to sort of take it a bit more seriously. It was pretty sort of similar sort of pathway, I guess.
And so for both of you, where does relays fit into the scheme of your careers? Was it there from a very early age through school systems, or did you not get into relays until a later date? How did that fit in the UK system?
So I guess we had like a junior relay program, which I was part of. So I was part of that from when I was kind of 16 to when I was 19. And then when I was 18, so after winning the European Juniors, I was picked to go to the World Championships in the relay, which was a deliberate decision by the relay coach at the time. So they wanted to get a junior athlete to go to the World Championships. They did it in the men's 4x4 as well, just to get them exposure to that kind of environment, just so they could see what it would be like. And then, so that's probably how it all started. And then for me, like, I've got a World Championship medal in the relay. I haven't got, I mean, my best performance of the individual was 2 places off the final in 100 meters in Osaka in 2007. But I went to 4 World Championships and Olympics in the relay, and I was only picked for one World Championships, 1 Olympics in the 100. So for me, it was just a way of like getting 2 major championships, getting all those different experiences. So it's really actually probably, when I look back on my career, most of my success, certainly at the senior level, came in the relay competition. So it's really an important part of
that. I think for me, obviously I was the era before Craig, and I think the athletes which we had at that time, it was almost an end of an era in '96 with the likes of Linford, John Regis, Colin Jackson, Tony Jarrett, stepping away from the relay scene, and you had young athletes coming through like Darren Campbell, Ian Mackey, Dougie Walker, Alan Condon, Julian Golding, Marlon Devonish, Jason Gardner. There was quite a lot of youngsters there coming through in '97, and we're backing up with myself and Dwayne Chambers. Dwayne winning World Junior record holder, and myself at the time being European Junior champion. I think that what they recognised is that they couldn't beat the likes of Frankie Fredericks, Al Bolden, Maurice Green, Obadiah Thompson. They couldn't beat these guys in the individual. But what they could do is they could match them when it came to rolling speed. You look at Alan Condon and Dougie Walker, they were exceptional bend runners, really good bend runners. If they ran a 200, 9 times out of 10, they'd come off the bend first, but then it would die. Darren Campbell had great top running, top flight speed, as well as Julian Golding. And you put them together on the relay leg, and they could match the guys the best in the world. And in '97, they did that, and they won a bronze medal, which gave them a lot of confidence then in their individual. Following year, they had Commonwealth Games in '98 when they won the gold in the European Championships, which led into World Championships in Seville, where they won a silver medal. And then they started to get finalists in the individual. Then I think from then on, you started to see there'd be 2 Brits in the final of 100 and 2 Brits in the final of 200. So what it did, it gave them that confidence to compete that level with those guys and be with them. And it kind of led from there. So where the relay sit for us, we always believe that we got 2 opportunities to be amongst it. If we didn't achieve it in individual, we can achieve it as a relay as well. So we had to address it. And even at the time, our coaches, we had some fiery coaches. Darren was coached by Linford, I was coached by Jock, Jason was coached by Malcolm Arnold. And then these guys, like their training session interrupted because of relay. But the athletes understood that they had to put the work into the relay in order to achieve it at the other side. And
the senior team was the first time I actually met most of those guys, and it was at World Championships, which is like quite a difficult situation to sort of meet them, and you don't really know what their kind of the way of doing things is, which is probably why me and Christian have tried to change how we do relays a little bit more over here, which is that we invite the junior team to the senior practice so that they can train together, they can start to get to know each other. Then the junior guys can see, well, what does it take to be successful at the senior level? What do these guys do? Are they that much different to you, really? What kind of things do you need to focus on? So that's probably like a really important learning from my career, which is that if you just focus on what happens as a junior, actually what it takes to be successful as a junior is not necessarily the same thing as what it takes to be successful as a senior. And if you're just focused on that, then you're kind of missing that piece of the puzzle, really. So by having them together, hopefully the juniors will be able to see, well, this is what we need to do and this is what it takes to be successful, and they can focus on that a little bit more.
I think for me, we had the odd relay camp early doors, so we'd always start the season, well, I guess people would say kickstart the season in Loughborough, which would always be early May. And the juniors would have a relay practice there and the seniors would. So we wouldn't train at the same time, but we would train afterwards or before them, and we'd get to see some of the senior athletes there. And I was quite fortunate because Darren Campbell would join in our training session quite often during the summer months, during the summertime between April and September to do his speed work, because we had quite a competitive group. So I got to see what he did on a regular basis and learn from him. But it definitely, I felt, taught us a lot. As juniors, you can get a bit of an ego and a bit of self-belief, but they were very good at keeping us grounded and realizing that it is different from junior to senior. Yes, you do have the talent, but there's a little bit more work, and we realized quite quickly that you could do little amounts of work as a junior to get big gains, and as you start to go into senior ranks, you have to do a lot of work in order to get little gains, and that was definitely recognizable. If I can just say one thing, I always remember after my World Juniors in '98, because I did the double, that everyone got a bit excited about it, and I got invited to Zurich Grand Prix, and that was one of the biggest races the year that year, because there was no World Championships or Olympics. It was mainly one of the biggest races in terms globally. So everybody was there in respects of Donovan Bailey, Maurice Atto, Francis Obukwelo, Sean Ogunkoya, and I got invited into that mix, and I ran 10-12 at the World Juniors, thinking that maybe I could get in the final year in Zurich. And I remember running in the heat, and I came dead last, and I ran 10:39, and it was totally different race compared to what I did as a junior, as I did in my World Juniors. I would be in the pack and I would break away at 60. When I raced against those guys, they were gone from the get-go, and I could see the backs. I could see the bottom of their spikes by 50 meters, and it was demoralizing. But speaking to the athletes afterwards, they learned this. It's a different kind of strength and different kind of power from junior to senior. And they were a lot stronger, a lot more powerful in that first 30, 40 meters. So, you learn those things as well to try and keep your composure.
Was there anything that you saw them do, whether it was, specific things in their warm-up, the thoroughness of their warm-up, the way that they were able to switch on in training? Was there anything that you picked up as a junior that you took into your your progression into senior ranks?
I think for me was watching the ability for them to be able to switch on at the right time. I got to see that with Dan in training. We used to do a lot of competitive block starts, and some I would win, some I wouldn't, and also the bander as well. Being able to handle a bander and be able to give that back and not let it put me down and demoralize me. It was that was something which I really learned. You need to be able to switch on at the right time. And all the other races you do in the season are all build up to the key races which you want to execute. So whether that would be for us, maybe a European Cup, the national championships, which would be the trials normally, and the major championships. Those are the races where you need to turn up and switch on and be focused and build into that.
Yeah, and I guess similar to what Christian said there is just the intensity with which the seniors had. So like you could go to a junior relay practice and it'd take you 2 or 3 runs to get into it, and then the 4th one would be fine, and that's the end of the training. Whereas with the seniors, like they just from soon as started, they were trained with intensity. Because there was a lot of competition between them, they just wanted to be as good as they could be. And similarly, then when you go to like Grand Prix and that kind of thing, when you're a junior, there's probably 1 or 2 races that really matter across the course of a year, and you sort of switch on for them, and the rest you just kind of go through the motions a little bit. Or at least I sort of felt like that a little bit. But then when you're a senior, every race matters, and there's 7 other people in that race that could quite easily beat you and probably want to beat you and will beat you. So you really have to be absolutely on it. Whereas when you're a junior, you go to some races, you're like, well, I'm probably the best person here, so I don't necessarily have to sort of be as focused as I would do. But as a senior, every single race you have to be as focused as possible, because like I said, there's 7 other people who are trying really hard to beat you.
I think that's one big thing that I'm intrigued for both of you with transition from junior to senior. I know going through, when you're a junior, you're not thinking about whether or not you'll win or lose. You're just going to win. And it's a much different way to approach a race when you're at the start line and you're being realistic and know you're not going to win when you've got far superior athletes, like when you're at Zurich, Christian. So I'm just interested in, I think that's a big issue that athletes deal with in that transition period of being the number one and everything revolves around they're just going to win, as opposed to then running a race and being able to execute or technically put a race together when you're not in the front. And we all need to learn how to do that. And I'm intrigued, is there any shortcuts you can give in terms of advice, or the importance of having some reflection, or to do some post-race debrief with coaches, or how did you deal with that situation to get through that period, which I don't think would have been very long for both of you, to transition into a senior athlete, but for some athletes it can take a couple of years to get from being the outstanding junior to then being competitive in a national open final.
Yeah, probably for me, like the best thing that happened to me during my career as a junior was that I actually lost quite a lot of races. So I would be used to losing races when I was 14, 15, 16, 17. And when you lose races, then you have choice. You can either say, well, this is stupid, I'm not going to do it anymore. Or you sort of sit back and think, well, why did I lose that race? What can I improve on? And then, like, over time, I just sort of got this absolute hunger when I lost a race that I wanted to put it right straight away. So the whole week after that race, I was just focused on that training session of what mistakes I make there, how can I improve that in the next race? And then when you go to that next race, is just like the focus on putting those mistakes right and being able to perform really well. So that then when you go into the senior ranks, you don't necessarily fear losing. You're realistic with how you can do, and then you sort of understand how to fight and be successful. So like my best ever race, where I ran slightly wind assisted 10:08 seconds to Usain Bolt, I was still on that start line knowing that I'm not going to win, right? Because Usain Bolt was definitely going to win this race. Doesn't lose races like this. And I remember stood there thinking, this is live on TV. I know my family are watching this. I know a lot of other people are watching this. If I don't run well, I'm going to look really stupid. So all I was focused on was when that gun went, it's just like absolutely exploding from the blocks. The first 5 meters, just putting as much power down as I could. And then at 60 meters, I was actually probably winning that race. And then obviously, like Usain Bolt was power past me. But I ran my personal best time. I beat slightly wind assisted. So it's just kind of learning that kind of what can you focus on when you do lose, what do you need to do to put it right? And then if you lose quite frequently, you learn not really to fear it. You don't like it, but you don't fear it. And so it's not something that sort of makes you nervous. Whereas I used to train with somebody that I think went 114 races without losing. And so like that then started to play on their mind, which is like, what is the next race going to be the one race that I lost? And so they started potentially to avoid races which were going to be a challenge for them. Whereas really what you need as an athlete is races that are quite hard for you. You want some races where you're going to win, but not by much. You want some races where you're not going to win, so you can learn from that. But you always want to have a chance of success so that it drives you on a little bit more. And so just being able to sort of cultivate that as a junior is really, really important. So yeah, for me, I probably always lost more races than I won, but that was a really important learning experience for me.
Yeah. How important is it to develop that in your own training environment, where you have to deal with the intensity of having a training squad that has got 2 or 3, 4 sprinters that are 10:0, 10:1, even quicker. How important is it to have that ability to focus on bringing that intensity to training every session of every week?
Yeah,
to overcome that fear.
Like for me, that's probably what drove me on for my transition from junior to senior, is that after I won the European Juniors, I changed coach. So I moved to Bath University. So I was trained by a coach called Malcolm Arnold, who had a lot of success. In my training group was Jason Gardner, who at the time was the European record holder for 60 metres, so on 6:46 and 9:98. I was also trained with someone called Ryan Scott, who eventually sort of finished his career with a sub 660, 60 metres and a 10:100. So we had this training group of 3 sprinters who every day we didn't want to be the second or third person in those reps. So it meant that like when we were doing block sessions, the intensity was ridiculous and the times we were dropping were stupid. And then in one season, us 3, the training partners, were the Great Britain team for 60 metres at the European Indoor Championships. And we got first and second in those championships, and Ryan was disqualified in the final for a false start. But so that was like, imagine every day that you're going there, and for me, the person that won that competition, Jason, and I came second, my biggest rival in the whole of Europe was training with me every day. So the intensity that brings is, sometimes it can be a bit too much, and there's obviously sessions where you have to take it a little bit easier. But yeah, just having that person there to push you time and time again is really, really important. And like, I think for a developing athlete, you want to seek out those competition opportunities in training so that there's never a day, on the days that you have to train hard, which isn't every day, but it is 2 or 3 days a week, you need to have that competition there to sort of spur you on and drive you on. And when I was a junior, I used to seek that out. So I used to try and get training sessions with Greg Rutherford, who won the Olympics in 2012 in a long jump. But it was also around 10:29, I think, for 100 meters. So I used to, in my training group, used to be fairly successful because I was probably the fastest person there. So I used to bring Greg in for these hard sessions, and he would beat me in many training repetitions, which meant that the next time I was determined that he wasn't going to beat me. So I just enabled me to raise my game a little bit more for training sessions.
Yeah, nah, I agree with you there, Craig. There's a couple of different parts for it for me. Definitely totally agree with the training group. I was quite fortunate to have a very good training group in the respect is I had my cousin Kevin Williams, who was an international sprinter and ran 10:34 at the time, which coming through at 15, 16, 17 18 was quicker than me. Doug Turner, who ran 20.34, who was a European silver medalist. Jamie Henthorne, who was a European under 23 champion. And Darren Campbell as well would be in the mix in our group. And we had a couple of other guys that could run 10.3, 10.4, and 20.8, 20.7. So it was constantly competitive, each training session. I remember being at training at 18 and winning a junior race quite well, and then going to training practice on Monday, and there weren't enough blocks to use. And Jock said to me, my coach at the time said, "Are you going to have to go without blocks?" And I'm thinking, hang on a minute. No. I got my season as well. And then Jock said, "Can you beat him? Can you beat him? Can you beat him? Can you beat?" And I'll go, "No." Well then, so there's not enough blocks for you. So you go without blocks today. So it was a very humbling experience. And, even I can remember after World Juniors, come back from World Juniors, the guys were preparing for Commonwealths as well as myself. And we was doing a block session, and I wasn't particularly running that well. So Jock set me up, and for me, I was thinking, hang on a minute, I've just ran 10.1 and 20.4. Yeah, I might be getting a hiding in training today, but Jock set me up, and these guys were catching me over 30, 40 meters. So, these guys were constantly switching on, constantly, and I had to get used to doing that. And after that year in 98, I also felt everything would come naturally for me then after that, because the season of 99 I had European 23 under 23s and the possibility of going to Seville World Championships. I didn't have a particularly great year. I won the silver in 100 and 200 at European 23s, and we won a gold in the relay, but I should have won the 100 and 200, and I didn't make the team for Seville. It was actually me and my training partner Doug Turner who was going to get selected. We both went 20.47. I didn't do the trials. He did the trials and came third. I didn't, because I was at European 23s and they selected him. So that gave me a bit of hunger and fuel to get it right for the following season. And I put a lot of effort in that winter. I went to the European indoors and won the 200 meters there. And I went to the Olympics that summer in Sydney and came fifth. But, I think having that competitiveness week in, week out, and the band is good as well. You need that. You need that to keep grounded, because even though the guys would give me a bit of stick if they would beat me in training, they'd also encourage me as well when it came to a race. They'd go out there and they'd be, go and prove yourself, go and show yourself. And I said this before, Jock was very good at just giving me simple cues. Make sure you attack the bend and make it difficult. Don't make it easy for these guys to beat you. And put yourself in a race. Execute what you need to do. Put yourself in a race and see where you are. And that's what I went out with, the same game plan. I remember being in the semi-final in Sydney and looking at my semi-final compared to the other one, and I had Attle Baldwin, I had Obadiah Thompson, I had John Capel, who was the American champion that year and world number one. I had Clyde Knight de Silva, world silver medalist. I think might be, I named Francis as well, Francis Obuquelo, he was in there. It was 6 of us, and only top 4 could have gone through. And I managed to come second in my semi-final and qualify. But the message was, make it difficult for them. You're in good shape. You've done the practice. You've done everything you needed to do. Doesn't matter what they've done. You know, 4 of those guys I've named there, 5 of those guys there, have run sub 20. At the time, I only ran 20.2. You know, but execute your race, put the pressure on them, make it difficult, and do what you've been doing in training, and that's what I did, and I was fortunate to go through. So I think it's key. It's good to have nerves, but don't let nerves overcome you. You know, use that, fuel that adrenaline which you have. You know, you need that nerves to give you adrenaline, but try and keep it simple and focus on simple things, and not worry about what everyone else is going to do, because the reality is their PBs might be quicker than yours, but it doesn't mean they're going to run it on the day.
I find it amazing we're getting into now in terms of what are the values and what's important to being an elite athlete. But I think one of the things, the themes that's coming through from both of you is your knowledge of your other people in your training squad is phenomenal. You're rattling off stats of their PBs and, you know, who was in races. I wonder in terms of the importance of that, in terms of the camaraderie and the team that you have around you, and how important that is, and the respect that you had for your other training partners. You're competitive as anything when it came to when the gun went, but outside of that squad and that journey of traveling together, I think is really important. So that's fascinating for me in terms of wondering, in the Australian environment, I'm thinking as a coach, how many of my athletes know each other's PBs, whereas you guys just can remember where it was and probably remember what the wind reading was. Like, it's fascinating that you do that. I think it's probably an important aspect of knowledge of sport, as well as knowledge of self and knowledge of others around you, to be on that journey. So that's one thing that's really important. And the other thing that's come through is obviously the importance of having that coach in your world that can provide that advice or that calming effect or whatever it might be to get the right arousal level for what we're all about, which is performance. So I'm interested in just the importance for you, both of you, in terms of your coach. I know particularly with you, Christian, one of your coaches passed away last year, which was, you know, an emotional time for you. And it is really about those connections that you can make with your coach. And I think we start to realise the importance of the role of the coach, not just on the track, but as developing, particularly in the juniors, to developing good people and developing those relationships. So I'm interested in your thoughts on your former coaches.
Yeah, you know, Jock was a big part of my life. You know, even when I moved on from him and retired, you know, Jock coached me from the age of 13, and the reality is I was a cheeky little kid, you could say, and but what he did is he recognized the talent in me, and you know, Jock always used to tell the story of when he first seen me was he coached my older cousin Kevin, who was 8 years older than me. I remember going down to the track, training with other club coaches, but I wanted to be with Kevin, so I'd come over, being 11, 12, being a bit cheeky. What are you up to, cuz? What are you doing? And Jock used to say he used to get on his nerves because I'd interrupt a session. So the one day there was an open meet, and he said, "Oh, why don't you just go over there and run? If you think you're that quick, go and run. I'm going to have a race." So I went and raced, and I won by a lot. Without him telling me, but he telling everyone, he said that kid's a real talent. So what he did is he allowed me to come over and join the session. First of all, it started off once a week, then it was twice a week. And you know, when I was 15, 16, I was also a good football and a good rugby player, and I had the opportunity to sign with Notts Forest in football. I had the opportunity to sign with Cardiff Rugby. And you know what? Jock was there and supportive for me through that. You know, he even actually came to Cardiff Rugby Club with me when they wanted to have discussions and to support it. He didn't say, "No, don't do that. You're an athlete through and through." What he did is supported me through that, explained to me, went through the options, and also said, "You know what? I believe you could be one of the best sprinters in the world if you're willing to put the hard work in." He goes, "I'm willing to put the work in, but it's up to you." You know, he didn't put no pressure on me. For someone like Jock to say that, who all the years I was running up until then never really give me much of a compliment. I'd break the under 15 Welsh record, and I'd come back to training on Monday, and it'd be like, "All right, get on with it." So for him to give me a compliment like that was fantastic, and we went on that journey together, and like I said, he helped shape me as a person as well. He made me stronger mentally. You know, Jock would always tune up Christmas Day, you know, even till last year before I left with a present for my kids. So he was very much there and supportive. And even when I moved on to other coaches, he was always in the ear in the background. So, you know, that's talking of Jock, you know, and after that, I trained with Linford, who was one of the greatest sprinters of all time. And again, showed a lot of support, but also, I guess he made me mentally tougher. Being around him made me realize why he was so successful, because he was just competitive at everything. You know, we'd play chess, we'd play boggle, you know, we'd be doing bounding over 3'6" hurdles. You know, he's 50 odd years of age and he's saying, "You can't do it. All right, let me show you." He hasn't even warmed up and he's bounding over these hurdles. And in your mind, you're going, if he can do it, I definitely can do it. So it gave you that inner belief. And then from there, I went with Dan Paff and Stu McMillan. And again, they showed me, I guess, the scientific side of sprinting and broke it down to the finer detail. And I learned a lot from them. And then I was with Rainer Ryder for the last 2 years of my career. And unfortunately, I was injured. But again, if I say of all those coaches, which I had, they had an unbelievable drive, passion and knowledge for the sport, and a real belief of being a winner. You know, it didn't matter about anyone else. It just mattered about you and the guys in the group. You know, they believed in what they did, and they actually believed in what you could achieve as well. And they definitely fed that through to the athletes.
Yeah, and then like from my perspective, I had 3 different coaches during my career. So I had one when I was a junior, one as I kind of transitioned from junior to senior in the first, 2 or 3 years of my senior success, and then one towards the end of my career. And probably from my perspective, they all had really strong positives, but they also had, obviously, like, no one's a perfect coach. They also had some things that weren't great about them. So like, I generally think there's probably like, there's not necessarily good or bad coaches, but there's coaches that are better for you at certain points of your career. And if I look at Malcolm, so I joined Malcolm in 2005 after winning the European Under-20s. And like I said already, so we had a really good training group there, but Malcolm had an athlete win the gold medal at the Olympic Games 40 years before I joined his training group. So I knew he was going to have experience. He'd already coached Colin Jackson for years. He'd helped other athletes with success. He had multiple Olympic gold medals. So if you're in that environment, you just think, well, this person definitely knows what they're doing. I'll absorb all that. And he was really good at teaching you what it took to be an elite athlete. So he didn't really care that you were a good junior, because he was like, well, you know, in this training group, there's 4 or 5 people that won European Junior Championships. So there's nothing special that you've got here. And you know, I've coached 30 people that have achieved that. So it really sort of enabled you to put it in perspective. And then he just had a really good ability to simplify performance to like a few key things. So like, as you kind of went through the training year, it was hard and it got a little bit easier. And he was like, well, these are sessions that we need. So the year that I ran my personal best, like Tuesday would be block starts, Thursday would be flying 30s, 2 very simple training sessions. But if you have them with absolute intensity, we didn't do much running in those sessions. I think we did 3 flying 30s. So we did like a total of 180 meters of sprinting in that session. But because it was competitive between you, it just ended up being a really, really, you know, useful and intense session. And then you'd go to competition and Malcolm would just sort of leave you to warm up, and then he'd say like 1 or 2 things to you before a race that just sort of, I don't know, without even trying to be motivating, he just said things that make you focus on what was important. And so like before one race, he just said, oh, this is like the semi-final of a national championships where you're trying to win the national championships. He goes, this is the race where you can sort of put the pressure on. So you do a good race here, going to put the pressure on your competitors, and they're going to be thinking about that in the final. So he just said, turn the screw, i.e. like just put the screwdriver in there and turn it, apply that pressure. And then so you're on the start line just repeating that in your head, and then it just ended up being a great race. So yeah, he was really good at simplifying what it took to be successful, and sort of cutting out all the noise that goes around it, just making you focus on what was important.
I think it's a sign of great coaches that you know, understand, have a really good relationship with their athletes, but obviously have some genuine care about their work ethic and understanding and using language for the individual athletes in their squads. You know, and that's a great example, Craig. Knowing what made you switch on and for a race, you know, to better yourself. I'm interested to hear any stories that you may have where your coaches, saw you having an off day at training, or maybe thought you weren't putting in or working hard enough. Is any stories there where they try to diffuse the situation and made you switch back on?
I can say there was, there's a couple of times. I remember one clearly as what was I was 15, I think it was, 15, 16. And it was the under-17s Welsh Schools Championships coming up. And for a couple of weeks, I hadn't been running particularly well, not as well as I thought, and obviously certainly jock. And I remember going to training on a Monday. I had the Welsh Schools Championships on the Saturday. And for me, that was the biggest race I was going to run. And I remember turning to training and thinking, I'm feeling a bit tired. And I was talking away, chatting away, and Jock was very, Jock was an angry Scotsman. So if he started shouting, you listen. And he said to me, right, you feel tired, do you? You feel tired? That's all you're doing is talking? Go home. So I was like, he went, go home. He goes, and don't come back this week. So I'm thinking, I got the Welsh Schools this weekend. He's telling me not to come back this week. So I thought, okay. So I went home, took the week off, went to Welsh Schools, smashed the Welsh record, won that. Now, what I didn't know is, but what Jock recognised is that summer, we had a really hot summer in the UK. And I was in school, and what I was doing is I was playing football in break time, lunch time. Then I would come to training in the evening. I was also still playing football, so I was doing football practice. So Jock recognised I was just tired, and I just needed a rest. And him speaking to me like that knew that me going home, what I would do that week would rest. I didn't play football anyway that week because I was scared. I was going to bed early. I was keeping my head down because I was focused. He knew by giving it that tone. If he never gave me that tone, I most probably would have just gone, I still play football in school. But I didn't want to upset him. I knew I upset him in that moment, or I felt I upset him. But he knew all I needed was just a rest, and I needed to make sure of that. So he was very good at getting inside your head in that way. So that's one story I could tell.
I probably had, I was never unmotivated to train. If anything, I probably trained too hard during my career. So I would have been better off having much more easier sessions or taking it a little bit easier in some sessions. Especially, I was diagnosed with overtraining syndrome for 1 year as well, which was a pretty difficult time. So with Malcolm or any of my coaches, never had to sort of make me work any harder. If anything, they had to pull me back. But I remember a couple of times I would do something which Malcolm deemed to be unprofessional. So a good example of this is probably 2008. So I'd had 2000 Olympics, where I was trying to qualify for that. I had a really bad hamstring injury in the February and March. So I don't think I ran for about 8 weeks. I had to have some injections in it. And then we'd gone to Turin for a competition for Great Britain. So we ran the relay at there, but also ran the individual. And in the 100, the last 2 meters, I remember just feeling a twinge in my hamstring. And then just sort of thinking, it's fine, I'll ignore this. And then I flew home and did a training session with Malcolm and a couple of other sprinters. And it was it's a really fast session because I was going to go and compete in Strava 2 days later. And my hamstring was sore, but I was like, nah, if I don't think it's injured, so if I just ignore it and just carry on training, I'll be fine. And then, so I ran and that was fine. I was walking around at home and I was thinking, this hamstring really is hurting me. I better go see the sports doctor. And he scanned it and I had a grade 1 hamstring injury, which is not great news 3 weeks before the Olympic trials, but it's also not disastrous. But I remember having to call Malcolm and tell him that I'd pulled my hamstring and that I knew before the session that I was injured. And he just absolutely laid into me. It was just like, how unprofessional are you? And then, so we hung up and then he called me back in about an hour later, sort of forgetting that he'd told me off so harshly the first time, and to continue to tell me off. And so the next day, obviously, then I had to go to training and apologise and to talk about it and that kind of thing. And I've seen him do it with one athlete once forgot to enter the national championships. And I remember coming down to the track, and I walked onto the track and saw Malcolm sat with the athlete, just like telling him off. So I had to turn around and walk away from the track so that could allow them to continue to sort of have that discussion. But the good thing about Malcolm was that privately he'd have that argument with you, and then he'd go and defend you unquestionably to everybody else. So when the athlete didn't enter national championships, you really told him off, but then he was like putting pressure on UK Athletics to allow that athlete to enter the championships and compete instead of defending him to that. So that was probably like a really good skill of Malcolm, which was he let you know what was and wasn't acceptable, but he'd keep that within the training group, and then he'd defend you as much as he could outside of that.
I got a question, Baz. Probably to wrap it up. We're at the Junior Nationals next year, and the winner of the 100 metres male and female cross the line, and you go down just to say hello, say congratulations. If you could crystal ball or, wish that they had 3 certain traits that could ensure that they have a better chance of transitioning from junior into being an Olympian, what would you want them to have?
So definitely resilience, which is like it's a buzzword, but basically when they're going to have hard times, which undoubtedly they're going to have, because when you're 18, it's reasonably easy to be successful. And when you're 19, 20, and the rest of the world are just trying to beat you every single week, you have to have that ability to sort of put it in perspective and say, okay, well, it's fine to lose as long as I learn from it and can move forward. And as long as you keep that hunger to be successful, and that's really important. So yeah, having that resilience part of it is number one for me. So that's number one. So number 2 is probably like just an absolute curiosity as to what it takes to be successful in their event. So it's not enough to just turn up and say, oh, I'll let the coach decide what I need to be successful. You have to take ownership of your career, because in 50 years' time, your coach might not remember you, right? So like they'll be fine, but you'll look back and think, well, did I do everything I could have done to take this chance to be as successful as I could have been? And so that's what's important is that, are you doing everything you can do to be successful? Because really it matters to you the most. So just that curiosity around what it takes to be successful and whether you're doing everything that you need to do to be the best you can be is probably really important. So Christian, I've said resilience and curiosity to be successful. It's over to you for the last one.
Wow, I definitely agree with resilience. You're going to need that for that transition from junior to senior, because the feel you have as a junior is going to be different as you go into the senior ranks. Those things you rely on, it'll change in a transition, and you'll have those doubts. So you definitely need self-belief to back yourself. The other thing I would say is, study your event, study your sport, have the knowledge of what it takes to succeed. I always remember being 17 years old thinking I was up against the rest of the juniors. I used to think to myself, what can I do to better myself? I was a lot smaller than everyone else and skinnier. So I thought, I've got incredible turnover, but yet my stride is shorter than everyone else. So if I was able to open my stride a little bit and maintain that turnover, that was my mentality at the time. I would go quicker, I would gain more yards, and I'd be further up the track. And between ages 17 to 18, I made big steps. I had to stick with it. I had to believe in it. I had to push through. So I think you need to have that self-belief in what you do, understand your event. And I think those are 2 things. But believe yourself, back yourself. Don't ever doubt yourself. Yeah, because and believe it's not as going to be the same as it was the juniors you are going to the senior ranks.
Maddie, I'm just interested also from your perspective as a coach. What do you see? What Craig and Christian have mentioned there. What do you think that some of our athletes can be doing better or being better at? Certainly from the junior perspective.
I'm a big believer in knowledge of the event, and just you don't have to be a stats junkie like these 2 and myself, but I think to know where you're going, you have to know a bit about the journey that's ahead. Otherwise you can get lost and be unsure of what's most important to get you to that goal. And I think being able to realize that you need the support around you as well, I think is really critical. The balance for me is also an interesting scenario. Like I've had athletes that pretty much just did athletics as their sole focus. And that comes with its own pros and cons, and you need to be careful about that. whereas you've got others who are doing their study or doing a full-time job as well. And again, that has pros and cons to do it. So it's really important that when you're in that transition period as a junior athlete, that you have a good group of people around you that you can speak to, and be prepared to ask questions and be prepared to listen to the answers. Most importantly, the choice is yours in the end, but if you open your eyes and your ears to different scenarios and different experiences from other people, that can help you to eliminate having the mistakes in your own journey. And if you have the right people around you, they're there to try and help you. They're there to try and get you the best result possible. But also, the big thing for me as a coach is the journey. It's about allowing the athlete to explore what their passions are, what they're interested in doing, and giving them the best opportunity to achieve that. And if I can play a role in that as a coach, then for me, that's something that makes me excited to be involved in that journey, and an honour to be involved in that journey. And it may, if it ends up not even being a result on a track, but it might be seeing them getting to the firefighters, or, just finding happiness in themselves. I think that's just as important as a coach, I think. And you'll find with a lot of the top coaches, the journey, that if you commit to a journey with an athlete, it's a lifelong journey, and it's worth a lot of hard times and a lot of good times. But in the end, it's the journey that is the most important thing. And the results that you'll see at a track, sometimes you'll see coaches, when they're an athlete achieving the goal of all goals, they're going to feel relief more than anything initially. But then the ability to share those moments probably 5 or 10 years after the career's over, the ability to look back and share and those memories together is something that's really important, that we all really need to work on. And finding those right connections to share those journeys is critical. And watching Christian's face when he started to talk about his coaches, he just lit up. And that was just an amazing thing to see your face, Christian, when you started talking about the memories. They're memories you've got forever, which is fantastic.
It is one thing I like to say, not to add on what you said there, Matt, but thank you. And it is special when you talk about coaches and that relationship, and they're great memories. But I think for some of the athletes as well, don't be afraid. Remember, don't be afraid to train with people who you may think are better than you, but you can always learn, because, the law of the track, and all my coaches said this, the law of the track is use or be used. I need you to help pull me along. You need me to help push you along. And that's the way it is. And that's how you get better. That's how you get better. That's how you push each other along, learn from each other, ask the questions, figure out why is their stats better than you? How can you get there? Why have you got a better top end than them? Pull them along. Those are the things which will help you. And I just think this is really key. And, don't be afraid to learn from that.